Emily Carter risked everything when she took the job no one else dared, working for the cold and feared rancher Grayson Blackthorne. His ruthless rules and hidden past made life on the ranch feel like a battle for survival. But Emily's courage and an unexpected bond uncovered a secret that turned the entire story upside down. And wait until you see how this emotional storm ends, with a twist that proves even the hardest hearts can change. Emily Carter's boots crunched against the sun-baked gravel as she stepped out of the dusty pickup truck. The heat of the Texan afternoon clung to her like a second skin, and the dry wind tugged at loose strands of her auburn hair. Ahead of her stood the weathered wooden archway with a sign carved in bold letters, Blackthorne Ranch. To many in the nearby town, the name carried an air of quiet dread, whispered with furrowed brows and nervous glances. For Emily, it represented desperation. 2 months ago, her mother's hospital bills had reached a number she couldn't even say aloud without choking up. Her own savings, modest at best, had evaporated like dew in the morning sun. And when she stumbled across the help-wanted ad for a live-in housekeeper and assistant at Blackthorne Ranch, every local blog and forum screamed the same warning: don't do it. He'll eat you alive. But she had no choice. The moment she stepped onto the ranch, the air seemed heavier. The sprawling land stretched as far as her eyes could see, rolling fields, grazing horses, a massive barn silhouetted against the cloudless sky. It was breathtaking and intimidating all at once. But the house that anchored it all was something else entirely. A grand Victorian-style mansion, dark as old oak, its windows staring like watchful eyes. And then she saw him. A tall man approached from the stables, his stride confident, almost predatory. Broad shoulders filled out a crisp white shirt tucked into worn jeans. His hands, calloused and tanned, held his Stetson loosely at his side. When he finally stopped a few feet away, Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine despite the heat. "Emily Carter?" His voice was deep, unyielding. She nodded, clutching her worn leather satchel a little tighter. "Yes, sir." His steel-gray eyes swept over her like a storm cloud rolling across the plains, assessing, measuring, judging. There was no warmth there, only cool indifference with a sharp edge that could cut. "You read the contract?" he asked. "Yes." "Then you know the rules. No excuses. No mistakes. I don't coddle anyone here. If you can't keep up, there's the road." He jerked his head toward the dusty trail she had come from. Emily swallowed hard, but lifted her chin. She wasn't going to let him see fear. "I understand. I won't disappoint you." For a split second, a flicker of something, amusement, surprise, flashed in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "Follow me." As she trailed behind him toward the house, Emily's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She wasn't sure if it was fear or determination. Maybe both. In the stories she had heard about Grayson Blackthorne, he was a man to be avoided, a rich, reclusive rancher with a temper as fierce as a cornered bull. Staff rarely lasted longer than a month. Some claimed he was impossible to please. Others whispered darker reasons no one dared confirm. Emily didn't believe in ghost stories or small-town gossip. But as she stepped across the threshold of Blackthorne Ranch, she felt an almost imperceptible shiver run through her. Whatever awaited her here, she would face it head-on. Because failure wasn't an option, not when her mother's life depended on her staying. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into a place where even the walls had secrets, and that the man leading her inside might be the most dangerous secret of all. Emily had been at Blackthorne Ranch for 3 weeks, and already she could feel the weight of its routines pressing on her shoulders like the unrelenting Texas sun. The house was enormous, with high ceilings and long, creaking hallways that seemed to go on forever. She had cleaned each room from top to bottom, memorized the endless list of chores, and learned the rhythms of the staff, when they arrived, when they disappeared, and more importantly, when they whispered. But no matter how hard she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. It wasn't just Grayson's piercing gaze, though that alone was enough to make her stomach tighten whenever he walked into a room. There was something about the house itself, its quiet, its shadows, that felt alive, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a mistake. Grayson was everywhere and nowhere, all at once. One moment he was in the stables, working alongside the ranch hands with sleeves rolled up and jaw set in determination. The next, he was gone without a word, vanishing into the house only to emerge hours later, his expression unreadable. Emily noticed a pattern. Almost every evening after sunset, he would leave the main house and cross the yard toward the old barn near the edge of the property. No one spoke of it. When she asked Tom, the grizzled ranch foreman, his weathered face grew tight. "Best not to pry, Miss Carter. Around here, questions have a way of stirring up more than answers." That only made her more curious. One night, unable to resist, Emily followed from a distance. The moonlight cast silver ribbons across the fields as she kept to the shadows, her footsteps careful against the gravel. Grayson disappeared inside the barn, pulling the heavy doors shut behind him with a sound that echoed like a warning. She crept closer, her heart pounding so loudly she feared he'd hear it. Through a crack in the wooden boards, she caught a glimpse of him standing in the dim glow of a single lantern. He wasn't alone. On a workbench lay an array of framed photographs, stacks of papers, and what looked like an old leather journal. Grayson's hand hovered over one photo in particular, a little girl with blonde curls and a smile bright enough to light up the dusty barn walls. Emily's breath caught. Was this his daughter? A sister? Suddenly, Grayson slammed the journal shut and ran a hand through his dark hair, his shoulders tense, as if he carried the weight of the whole ranch, and something far heavier. Emily's foot shifted on a loose board, the creak splitting the silence like a gunshot. "Who's there?" His voice snapped like a whip, sharp and commanding. Emily froze, her fingers gripping the edge of the barn wall. She could hear her own breathing, ragged and shallow. She should run. She knew she should, but she didn't. After a long moment, she backed away slowly, her heart thundering in her chest. When she reached the safety of the house, she pressed her back against the cool wood of her bedroom door, trying to steady her trembling hands. Grayson Blackthorne wasn't just a hard man. He was a man haunted by something, or someone. For the first time since arriving, Emily wasn't sure if her greatest danger came from failing at her job or from discovering the secrets he worked so hard to keep buried. The air felt different that morning, thick and heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Emily stood on the porch, clutching a wicker basket filled with linens, her eyes scanning the horizon. Dark clouds rolled across the plains like restless waves, their edges tinged with a menacing shade of green. "Looks like we're in for a bad one," Tom muttered as he passed with a coil of rope slung over his shoulder. His tone carried a weight that made Emily's stomach tighten. By midday, the wind had grown fierce, rattling windows and sending loose leaves skittering across the yard. The ranch hands scrambled to secure fences and lead the more skittish horses into the stables. Emily, determined to help despite the biting wind, followed suit, gripping the reins of a young mare that reared nervously. "Easy, girl, easy," she whispered, though her own voice trembled as much as the animal's flanks. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air, a tree limb snapping under the strain of the wind. The mare bolted, jerking Emily off her feet and dragging her several yards before she managed to let go. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Before she could rise, a strong hand gripped her arm, hauling her up with surprising gentleness. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Grayson's voice was low but sharp, his eyes flashing like the lightning streaking across the sky. Emily blinked up at him, rain already streaking her face. "I was trying to help." His jaw tightened, but he didn't let go of her arm. Instead, he pulled her toward the stables. "Then help by staying alive." The stables were chaos. Horses whinnied in panic. Hooves clattered against wooden stalls. The storm roared outside like a living creature, and the roof creaked ominously overhead. Emily moved instinctively to calm a frightened foal, whispering soft reassurances as she stroked its neck. When a deafening crash shook the building, a large beam collapsing under the storm's assault, Emily felt herself shoved to the ground. She braced for impact, but instead found herself pressed against Grayson's chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. The scent of rain-soaked leather and hay filled her senses. His heartbeat was a steady drum against her ear, and for a moment, the chaos faded. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice rough but steady. When the danger passed, they remained still, breathing heavily. Emily tilted her head just enough to meet his eyes. They were no longer cold steel, but something warmer, softer. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he helped her to her feet and stepped back, as if realizing how close they'd been. His expression shuddered, returning to its usual stoicism. But something had shifted. Emily felt it in the way his gaze lingered on her just a fraction too long before he turned away. And she knew he felt it too. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the storm's dying whispers, Emily couldn't shake the memory of his arms around her. The man she had feared, the man everyone feared, had risked himself to protect her. For the first time, she wondered if there was more to Grayson Blackthorne than the hardened rancher with a cold heart. And for the first time, her own heart betrayed her with a soft, unspoken question. What if he wasn't the villain everyone believed him to be? The storm had passed, leaving behind a ranch drenched in the scent of wet earth and renewal. But in Emily's mind, the air was still heavy, thick with questions she could no longer ignore. Grayson had saved her life. Twice now. Yet every time their eyes met, there was something behind his calm facade, a flicker of pain so raw it made her chest ache. That evening, she found herself wandering the quiet halls of the mansion. The house seemed different at night, its corners deeper, its shadows thicker. She paused before the door to Grayson's study. It was slightly ajar, golden light spilling into the dark hallway. Her fingers hesitated on the wood. She shouldn't intrude. She should turn back. But then she heard a sound, soft, almost imperceptible. Not words, not quite. A low murmur, like someone speaking to a ghost. Emily pushed the door open just enough to see him. Grayson sat at his desk, elbows resting on its surface, head bowed into his hands. The lantern's glow caught on the sharp angles of his face, casting deep shadows beneath his eyes. Before him lay an old photograph, the same one Emily had glimpsed in the barn. A little girl, no older than 8, her smile wide and unguarded. He whispered a name, so softly she barely caught it. Sophie! The sound of it carried a weight that froze Emily in place. Suddenly, Grayson's voice broke the silence, this time directed at her. You shouldn't be here. Emily startled, realizing too late that he had sensed her presence. She stepped inside, her hands clasped in front of her. I didn't mean to intrude. I heard you. His shoulders stiffened. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak. Then, with a weary sigh, he lifted his gaze to hers. My sister, he said quietly. She died 10 years ago, a car accident. Emily's heart squeezed. She took another cautious step forward. I'm so sorry. He gave a small, humorless laugh. Sorry doesn't bring her back, or my parents. I was the one left to clean up the mess, the ranch, the debts, all of it. His voice hardened, though it trembled at the edges. I built walls, because every time I let someone in, I lose them. Sophie, my parents, I can't... He stopped himself, shaking his head. This place became all I had, and I've turned it into a prison. Emily felt an ache in her throat. For the first time, she saw the man behind the reputation, the wounded brother, the grieving son. Without thinking, she crossed the room and placed a hand on his. You're not alone anymore, she said softly. His eyes searched hers, the steel in them softening into something fragile. For a moment, it seemed like he might pull away, retreat back into his solitude. But instead, his fingers curled over hers, not tightly, not possessively, but as if holding on for balance. They stayed like that in the quiet, two souls standing at the edge of something unspoken. Emily didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she saw the first crack in Grayson's armor, and in that crack, a glimmer of hope flickered, hope that perhaps even the harshest hearts could heal. Spring arrived quietly at Blackthorn Ranch. The fields, once brown and brittle, now shimmered with new grass, and wildflowers dotted the hills like splashes of paint. Emily walked slowly along the fence line, her fingers trailing over the smooth wood. She could hear laughter in the distance, light, free, and full of life. It was Grayson. He stood in the paddock with a young foal nudging at his hand. His face, once marked by hard lines and shadows, now seemed softer under the gentle sunlight. When he looked up and saw her, his smile wasn't guarded anymore. It was warm. You're early, he called. She shrugged with a grin. Couldn't stay away. As she joined him, Grayson reached for her hand instinctively, as though it had always belonged there. Their fingers laced together naturally, without hesitation. Life on the ranch wasn't easy, but it no longer felt like a prison. Together, they had rebuilt it, not just the fences and the barns, but something far more fragile. Emily glanced toward the house, where a small pair of boots sat on the porch steps, muddy from play. Inside, their little boy was no doubt chattering away to his grandmother on the phone, his laughter carrying through open windows. She leaned her head on Grayson's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of hay and sun-warmed leather. "This place," she murmured, "I used to think it would break me. Instead, it saved me." He kissed the top of her head, a rare and tender gesture. "No," he said quietly, "you saved me." As the breeze danced through the wildflowers and the horses grazed peacefully, Emily realized she was living the season she never knew she longed for, a season of healing, love, and quiet joy. The girl who once came here out of desperation had found not just a job, but a home. And in the heart of the man everyone feared, she had discovered the gentlest part of all.